Hello everyone, this is Satish Kumar. I am here with another lesson on Indian economy, and in this lesson we are going to learn about the economic reforms, the continuation of economic reforms. So we learned in the previous lesson about what is economic reforms and what are all the models that are available for economic reforms. So in this lesson we will learn about the economic reforms that have been taken in India. Okay. So in the previous lesson we learnt about the models like planned model, Washington consensus, and the mixed economy model. Okay. So in this lesson we learn about the economic reforms in India. So when we talk about economic reforms in India, we generally talk about the reforms that have been taken in after 1991. Okay. Although India attempted in the 1970s and 80s at a minimal level, but generally it is the reforms that have been taken in the 1991 was considered as economic reform. Okay. See, in the 1991, India faced huge financial crisis. Okay. India is having very little amount of foreign exchange reserves to pay its balance of payment. Okay. So to meet the balance of payments debt, no, or to meet the import bill, okay, the debt of import bill, no, we had just 14 days of money only. Okay. At present, today we have nearly 1 year like that. Okay. So at the time in the 1991 we faced huge financial crisis. We had just 14 days of foreign exchange reserve, 14 days of to manage the foreign exchange. We had only very little foreign exchange reserve which could be met only for 14 days of our import bill. Okay. So India was facing a huge financial crisis. Not only India was facing huge financial crisis, there are also other problems like uh, the foreign debt is keep on rising, the balance of payment crisis. Okay. Then there is a huge fiscal deficit of over 8% of GDP, and there is also hyperinflation. All the prices are rising at a phenomenal level. There is 13% of inflation. It was at this time, since India was facing the financial crisis, India has no other opportunity, no other way other than to lend money from the international financial institutions. Okay, like IMF. Okay, so it gave an opportunity for India to knock the door of IMF for loan. Okay, and IMF, when it is providing the loan, no, they said yes, we will provide the loan, but the IMF have certain conditions. It put certain conditions saying that you have to reform your economy. Okay. So this crisis situation gave a golden opportunity for reform, to bring reform in our country, and it was India launched the economic reforms. Okay, so in July 23rd, 1991, in response to this balance of payment crisis, the then Prime Minister was Narasimha Rao and the then Finance Minister was Manmohan Singh, who led the launched the economic reforms. Okay. See, in India at that time the reform was considered as anti-poor, and it was, the reforms was mostly pro-rich. Okay. And mostly people believe that the benefits or reforms are not going to help the masses, and it is going to help only the people in the top. Okay. And generally initially it will be like that. Okay. Any reform that is taken, no, first it will benefit only the people in the top layer. It will take time to trickle down towards the bottom. So as a result, generally the reform process, the growth process, to reach the people in the bottom, no, it will take some time, and generally people will view it as a anti-poor and pro-rich. Okay. So the reform that India took, no, it led to growth in economy. Okay, there is no doubt about it. But whether it reached equitable growth, whether it was the growth was distributed to masses, was a huge question. In fact, India still is aiming for inclusive growth. Okay, that means the growth has not reached all the segment equally. Okay, but economic reforms led to growth, and some section benefited from it. Okay, so that is the first thing you have to know about it. Uh, in this lesson, we will particularly learn about very clearly what are the economic reforms that India took. As I said earlier, when India went to ask IMF, see IMF by its extended fund facility program, no, offers some currency support to for countries to solve their BOP crisis. But those support, those loan, no, will come with some obligatory conditions. Okay, so these conditions has to be fulfilled by the country in their economy. For example, to bring in economic reforms. Okay, so the economic reforms that India took in the 1991 is not a voluntary decision by the government, rather than it was a involuntary or obligatory reform. It was asked by the IMF to take, but the government then has to accept it, and it took. Okay, so if you want to give the credit to IMF, you can give it to the IMF. If you want to give the credit to the then Congress government like Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao, you can give it to them. That is up to you. Okay, but they had the political will to implement that reform process. In fact, when they were trying to implement that, launch the reform process, no, they were heavily criticized as it was pro-rich, and the reforms were pro-rich, and India was bowed down to the world, developed world and IMF, right? So there were a lot of criticism, but despite that criticism, they went again along with the reform. Okay, so you have to give some credit to them. Okay, so what are the conditions that IMF put in the when India went for the loan? So some of the conditions that they put, no, they asked India to devalue the rupee of India by 22%. Okay, so India did it in 2 steps, and it was as a result of this, the value of Indian rupee, which was then 21 rupees to US dollar, was reduced to 27 rupees, the depreciated. So Indian value was devalued. Okay, and it was again the rupee value was put to the market rate. Okay, so based on the competitive market rate of the world. Okay, and as a result, today we have our rupee value at nearly 70 plus. In fact, 1 US dollar is equal to 70 plus of rupees of India. So that is how India had depreciated over the years between 1991 to 2020. Nearly in the 30 years, our value has gone down by nearly 50 rupees. Okay, that is a huge amount. Okay, so whether the reform was able to appreciate a rupee, no, there was nothing. Okay, okay, that is a different. Then the IMF also asked the India to reduce the import tariff. Okay, it wanted to reduce the protectionist measures. It wanted India to open the economy. That could be done by reducing the import tariff. Okay, in fact, India in the 1990s, no, had high level of import duties for lot of products that are coming to India from other countries. Okay, nearly 130%, like that. In fact, for certain products, it even had 400%, 600%. Okay, but generally it was at general level it is like 130%. Okay, that was a huge amount. If any product that is produced in a foreign country, if the, for example, take the case of a cell phone, okay, that was not there in the 1991. I am giving an example. If a cell phone is produced for from China for 10,000 rupees, no, if that product has to come to India, no, what will happen is the product price will go to 23,000 rupees because of the 130% tax that is imposed. Okay, I am giving a average figure. I don't know, I am not giving the exact figure, I am just giving a general figure. Okay, so a 10,000 product, if India having such a huge import tariff, no, the price that the Indians have to pay to buy a product, okay, will go such high. This was done to protect our own industries. Okay, in India's industries, if the same mobile is produced in an Indian industry, no, for example, China was because it is having competitiveness in the manufacturing sector, no, they may produce for 10,000 rupees, but the same product which could be produced in India only for 20,000 rupees with the same quality like China produce. So that is why India wanted to put such a huge amount of tariff, okay, so that the Indian product market is also there. Okay, so please understand why these kind of import tariffs are imposed. In fact, in the 1990s there was no cell phone. I am just giving an example so that you could understand. Okay, take any example in the 1990s product, it will be like that. Okay, a product that is produced in India will not have the same competitive advantage like a foreign product, because some countries like US, Europe and other countries, no, they have high technology, high capital, as a result their products will be high quality and they can produce at a cheaper rate. But the same product when it is produced in India, because of our industries, of our condition, we may be producing at a higher cost. Hence India wanted to protect our own industry and the products that is coming from other countries not getting into flooded into the India, no, they wanted to put some tariffs. But the problem is the Indian consumers has to pay the extra amount. Okay, so if an Indian want to have a high quality product, he has to pay this extra money that the government is imposing, because the product is going to be sold to the Indian, and when the product is come with such a huge amount, see, if India is not importing putting a tariff like 130% and India just imposes 15% tariff, no, the product will come to India for just 11,000 and in the same phone. But if India puts 130%, it will go to 23,000. So the customer will be suffering. One of the biggest advantage India got from the economic reform is because of the import tariff reduction, lot of product, high quality product came into India, and today we are availing all the benefits at a lower cost. Okay, lot of products that are produced in others, because also the quality products are not produced in India because of we don't have that kind of manufacturing technological facility like that. Okay, so India was able to reduce the tariff. This was particularly asked by the IMF. So India reduced the product where import tariff. In fact, it was reduced from 130% to 30%, and India did it in the 2000 itself. Okay, slowly, but India did not reduce it overnight. India reduced it gradually. Okay, so by 2000, India's import duties came around 30%. For certain products, it may be still high, but generally it bought in 2000 to 30%, and later on India, realizing the benefit from it, it voluntarily cut down, and at present it is around 15% generally. Okay, even now with 15%, India is considered as one of the highest tariff country. India is charging high tariff. Okay, so even now when compared to other countries, India is One of the reason is India want to still protect its own industries. The biggest problem with India is Indian manufacturing industry has not achieved competitiveness. We will learn about it, why India haven't achieved that. Okay. The third that IMF asked, the third important thing that IMF asked is to cut down the, in fact, it wanted to raise the excise duties because the country will face shortfall in the revenue because it is reducing the import tariff. No, to offset this, it wanted India to improve the excise, increase the excise duties. See, when a country reduces the import tariff, no, it means the product that is coming from foreign countries will become lesser. Okay, and when a country which is increasing its excise duties, no, it means the product that is going from India to other countries, that is the export products, okay, will become higher because India is charging here itself an extra 20%. Okay, so the exports will become costlier and the import will become cheaper by this two method. Again, both these measures will look like it is going to benefit who? The foreign companies, because Indian product, when it is going to compete in the foreign market, it is going to become high, and the foreign products, when it is coming to India, it is going to be less. Okay, and that is why this kind of reforms are criticized by people and masses, and especially Indian industries and other people. Okay, but we also understand that the reduction in import will help our customers. Okay, we will have more choice, more product, less value, high quality products like that. Okay, and it also asked, the IMF also asked India to cut down the government expenditure 10%. Okay, in fact, annually it wanted Indian government to cut down the deficits, government expenditure. Okay, so it asked India to go for fiscal consolidation or fiscal prudence. Okay, India even then did not started it, even though it took steps to cut down expenditure, but India being a democratic country and welfare state, and India for long time being a populous country, no, India could not cut down this kind of extra expenditure, but slowly, gradually India did that. Okay, and only after 2008, 10, in recent times only India is going for fiscal prudence. Okay, India is reducing the fiscal deficit. Okay, and that too after the current government came. In fact, the previous Congress government itself started implementing strictly FRBM Act, but because of the 2008 financial crisis, India was facing some issues. As a result, the fiscal deficit, the fiscal prudence, the Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act could not be carried out as planned. But after 2012 and 13, India started picking up the economy. Now, once again, we are focusing on it. At present, because of the coronavirus, once again we are going to go into this kind of problem where we are not going to meet the fiscal deficit targets. Okay, so generally the IMF in the 1990s asked the government to reduce the expenditure, government expenditure. Okay, all these are considered as economic reforms. In fact, these are all dictated by the IMF. These four important. Please remember this. In fact, what are the reforms that are taken in the 1990s? Okay, basic things. So, see, the reform measures consists of two categories, two broad categories of measures. These are named as macroeconomic stabilization measures and structural reform measures. Okay, please remember this point. The reform measures consisted of two categories. One is macroeconomic stabilization measures and structural reform measures. What is macroeconomic stabilization measures? So, when we talk about macroeconomic stabilization measures, it means the taking care of the fundamentals of economic, like managing the uh, inflation, okay, controlling the inflation, uh, taking, so it is about taking overall the economy, like managing the fiscal deficit and all the things, okay. So all this will boost the aggregate demand in the economy. So the macroeconomic stabilization measures is the government, both the monetary and fiscal policies will be taken care, will be will help to control the inflation and control the money supply and interest rate and other things, okay. So these are all called as the macroeconomic stabilization measures. And the second is the structural reform measures, okay. And these structural reform measures are very vital for growth, okay. Macroeconomic measures is short term measures which will focus on correcting the economic crisis, but structural reform measures will enable for the economy to grow, okay. This is the difference between these two measures, okay. So these reforms are will free the government economy from the control of government and allocate market to allocate the resources. So when we talk about structural reforms, it talks about taking steps to go for the growth of the economy. In fact, when I talk about in the case of India, between 1950 to 90, India had too much of government control over the economy, no. By the structural reform measures, it means that asking the government to reduce its role and allow the market to play a major role in the economy, okay. So it fundamentally means that tackling all the obstacles which will help the economy to grow by liberalizing labor, product and service market and encouraging job creation and investment, okay. So it will boost the economy, okay. In fact, an economy's competitiveness and growth potential all will come only when an economy takes structural reform, very very vital. And this second steps of measures, no, India took very slowly, okay. India didn't go for what you say rapid reforms, okay. But India did some structural reforms after 1991. In fact, even the uh, uh, reforms that are taken was seen by people as very rapid, okay. So that is why India went for that kind of slow process, okay. So the reform process consists of these T terms, okay, LPG. That is why the 1991 is called as LPG, okay. That is liberalization, privatization and globalization. So these are the three processes by which the reforms will be taken, okay. So both the liberalization and privatization is about the way to achieve it, and globalization is the ultimate aim, okay. We will learn what is liberalization, what is privatization and what is globalization. So the first, what is liberalization? It means that it is the process of decreasing the role of state and increasing role of market, okay. So when we talk about liberalization, see, the government, when it is having too much of control, it is controlled economy. When the government loses its control, it is called liberalization. So basically liberalization is decreasing the role of state in the economy and letting the market to determine the economics function, okay. So generally pro market or pro capitalistic inclination in the economic policies are considered as process of liberalization, okay. And this has happened in the 70s and 80s in the European countries, and in the 80s in the China, when China approached the open door policy. But the term liberal is wider, okay. uh, the liberalization is about economic liberalization, but the liberal term is a liberalism term is a wider concept which include other things, but those things are not part of China. In fact, when we talk about liberalism, we could talk India is far better than China, okay. Like individualism, liberty and democratic system are far better in India. In fact, China is not a still not a democratic system. there are too much of very little personal liberty for people in China. In fact, the government will have too much of say in everything. Okay, and there is not enough individualism in China. But India, these kind of trademarks are there. But China, what it did is it liberalized its economy, and liberalization of economy led to the growth of China. Okay, in India, we may not have economic freedom, but in India we have still a very high political freedom. Okay, and for that reason I always say that whether you will live in China or India, no, in a rich China or a politically freedom India, no, I will always say I will live in India, because what is the use of having all the economic benefit and you don't have any personal liberty? See, in India, we can criticize. I'm an ordinary person. If I feel that the Modi government's policies are not good, I can make a criticism about Modi in my Facebook page. I have that liberty. But in China, I don't think you have that kind of liberty. Okay, you won't have that kind of liberty. Okay, that is the difference between a liberalism and communism country. Okay, India is in that kind of saying a very liberal country, but Indian economy is mostly controlled by the government for a long period of time, and even today Indian economy still is being largely controlled by the government. Okay, so India is not going for full liberalization, but after 1991 we started liberalizing. Okay, please remember these kind of points. So the second point is privatization, the economic reforms. See, there are exactly when we talk about privatization, no, the process that will be taken is what is known as denationalization. See, government having too much of public sector companies for producing goods and services for the need of people, no, these kind of things are called public sector economy. And when government is playing doing all these running all these industries, no, it is called a public sector company. Okay, government companies. When the government selling all these public sector companies to the private players and government is not producing anything, no, it is called privatization. Okay, so privatization in its purest sense, no, it means that denationalization. Okay, India, in fact, when India during the time of Indira Gandhi period, rather than going for nationalization, it should have went for privatization partially. Okay, but it went the other way. That's a different story. Okay, so privatization in its purest sense mean denationalization, that is selling out the entire ownership of the asset of a government sector to the private sector. Okay, 100%. But India didn't go like that. Even India went for privatization in the 1991 reforms. It only went for slow. Okay, so denationalization is selling the entire state ownership to the private sector, transfer of entire state ownership like 100%. Okay, the selling the entire private company to the public company to a private company. But that didn't happen in India. In fact, it was only happened in the UK during the Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, that woman. She went for this kind of economic reforms, where she denationalized all the companies, public companies to the private companies. Okay. In fact, this route was avoided by all countries because generally it will not look good. Okay, so even some countries attempted this, but they never went for that wholly. Only in UK, Margaret Thatcher did that in the 80s. Okay, India never attempted this kind of denationalization, that is selling the entire public sector company to the private sector. India instead went for what is known as disinvestment. Okay, again this is also to way to bring privatization, that is selling the ownership of public sector company to the private companies. Okay, Here, what the government will do is, instead of transferring the entire state ownership of the public asset to the private sector, it will sell it in parts. Okay, it involves selling of the shares of the state-owned enterprises to the private sector in parts. For example, disinvestment is denationalization of less than 100% of ownership. For example, in fact, there are two methods of achieving it. Okay, if an asset is sold by the government to the tune of up to 49%, okay, when you say up to 49%, it means the government is selling to the private sector only up to 49%. Government still retains 51%. That means that company will be still the government company, public sector company. But still it is called as a privatization because part of the government public sector company is sold to the private sector. So it is up to 49%. Okay, this kind of disinvestment is called as token disinvestment. Okay, but when the company, when it is selling the shares of the state-owned enterprises above 50%, like 51%, 70%, 90%, or even 100%, no, it is called strategic disinvestment. Okay, where the in this case the ownership will change to the private sector. When the public sector company is selling more than 50% of its assets, it naturally, the company ownership will change to the private sector. Okay, in fact, this is the real privatization. But in India, both the token disinvestment and strategic disinvestment, both are considered as privatization. Okay. India in the 1990s only went for token disinvestment. Okay, please remember this point. When India attempted in the 1990s, it didn't straight away went for strategic disinvestment. Even today, for large number of public sector company, India has done only token disinvestment. India, even though it is talking about, it is going for strategic disinvestment, there are not enough takers of this kind of strategic disinvestment. Okay, that is why we say that India is having the problem of Chakravyuha challenge. That is, India has entered into the business of creating industries, but India don't know how to come out of it. India is not able to implement this kind of strategic disinvestment. Okay. Okay, we will learn about this later. Okay, so India initially in the 1990s went for token disinvestment. Okay, please remember this point. So apart from this selling of the public sector company, there are also other things in this privatization, which are any economic policies which will directly or indirectly seem to promote the expansion of private sector. Okay, so for example, between 1950 to 1980, we had lot of licensing and reservation of industries. Okay, industry, when it is have to open, it has to get permit from get license from government. Similarly, there are certain industries which are reserved for certain sectors, like small scale sector only will open certain industries, and certain industries are reserved for government exclusively. So these kind of things are also changed. These are also part of privatization. In fact, after 1991, this licensing norm was reduced, and the reservation of the for lot of companies which are reserved for public sector were actually de-reserved. So lot of any public sector company, any private sector company can open a industry on those kind of sectors which are previously only part of government sector. Okay, so all these are all part of privatization. Even cuts in the subsidies. Okay, when the government is paying too much of subsidies for certain things, so these are also part of privatization. And promotion of foreign investment, permission to invest in India for foreigners, all these are considered as privatization. Okay, so both these liberalization and privatization will help promote globalization. Okay, so what is globalization? Globalization is generally called as an increase in economic integration among nations. So India, if it is integrated with other countries of the world, it is naturally known as globalization. Okay, so the definition will be like unrestricted cross border movement or free movement of goods and services, capital, technology and labor between countries. Okay, if America is producing a product and that product is coming to India easily, no, that free movement, no, it is part of globalization. Similarly, the capital of America coming into India and the capital of India going to America, like, and the technology of America coming into India and the technology of India going to uh, America. Similarly, a technology, labor from India going to US, all these. So there is free flow of movement between all these four factors. But generally, developed countries will talk about goods and services, capital and technology. They won't talk about labor, because for them labor is not part of globalization, because they are not having excess labor. For them only their goods and services has to come into our country. For them their capital has to come into our country. Even technology they won't willing to give us. Okay, they will only give us goods and services, and their capital they may invest. Okay, so these four are, when it is free movement, it can be considered as the globalization. Okay, please remember this point. Okay, so how the reform is perceived in India? See, the reform, when it was initially launched, no, it was perceived as, it was faced severe criticism from almost every section. Okay, uh, the opposition is the major people will be questioning it, but it also had support from the larger masses of people. Okay, everybody criticized the government. Okay, although the reforms are taken for the growth of the economy and to bring the competitiveness of the Indian economy, but it was seen as the by the people as India is bowing to the dictates of the IMF and the imperialist force and multinationals. In fact, their aim for reform is also that they want India to open their economy for their products. Okay, so this politics of economic reforms, no, has damaged India more than the reform, the benefited India. See, reform, if it has to be benefit all the people, no, it has to come with political consensus. But India did not have political consensus. At that time, there was huge resistance, and that is why I said that if you have to give credit to the then Congress government, you have to give it, because it has to implement it under tremendous pressure. Okay, political parties in India were divided. But in these days, no, in the present situation, reforms are considered as essential, and lot of people today are understanding the importance of reforms, and they see the potential of growth of reform. But still a large segment of people are questioning the reforms. Okay, in fact, even now the government is trying to bring him up with lot of reform, and there are a lot of protest and other thing are going. Okay, so please remember, the reform is generally in the earlier stages in the 90s was perceived as pro-rich and capitalistic, pro-capitalism. Okay, but in recent times there are change of mindset in the people, but not entirely. Okay, when there is lack of political support, it is very difficult to bring the reform. Okay, and please also remember, reforms, when it is brought to the country, no, it takes time to reach the masses. As a result, it will be always perceived as against people. Okay, I would say, in fact, this I invented this. I would say that reform is like a belly. In the humans, we have stomach, no, belly, no. Reforms are like belly. When a reform is introduced, no, what will happen is it will take, economy is like belly. Okay, anything change in economy when it is happening, no, uh, whether it is negative or positive, anything that is happening in the economy, first it will affect the belly. So when, see, for a human being, if you are lazy, first you will accumulate belly, and if you are doing exercise, the last thing that will reduce in your body is also belly. So the belly will reduce only last when you are doing something positive, and when you are doing something negative, the first thing that will acquire is in your belly. Similarly, when an economy is affected, the first people who will suffering is the people in the bottom sector. India, when it is facing the slowdown, no, who are the people who will affect first? The people in the bottom. And similarly, when the economy is gaining, no, the first people that will be the last people that will benefit also the people in the bottom. That is the way that is why these kind of reforms are always seen as pro rich and pro industrialist. Okay, and when government also act like that, no, it will make difficult, very difficult for reforms to bring. Okay, and the politics about reform and the opposition will oppose this reform, and ignorant people will actually see the reform that is taken by government as anti-poor. Okay, but generally the process of economic reforms is not anti-poor, it was aiming to their growth, and only by growth an economy will solve the problem of an economy. Okay, so unless the economy is able to achieve higher growth, the purchasing power of the masses will not be increased. The people in the bottom can never benefit. But that can only happen by economic reform. But to bring that kind of economic reform, it needs political will and political consensus. And when a country which is having such a huge democratic system like India, where there is too much of opposition, it is very difficult to bring those kind of big reforms. Okay, in fact, that is why the present a few days back, the present Niti Aayog chairman said that in India, India has too much of a democracy to bring big reforms. Okay, so please understand this kind of point. Okay, again, that doesn't mean that India should not be democratic. Democracy is good, because sometimes the people in the top, the government, no, they may, in fact, that is what I said. When the government itself is acting pro capitalistic and helping only the chronic capitalism, no, any measures that is taken by the government will actually seem very suspectable. Okay, so political stability is very important, and political consensus is very important for economic reforms to be uh, launched and implemented. So we will see in detail about the economic reforms into what are all the ways it was taken. In fact, I will give this in my next lesson. In fact, India is considered as taken 3 generation of reforms. In fact, some say there are 4th generation of reforms, and at present is India also going to the what is known as transformational reform. Okay, we will see what are all these things in the next lesson. Okay, please keep watching.